Good evening. This is Lama Rangbar. I welcome you to the fourth and final webcast with Lama Rangbar, dedicated to the spiritual dimensions of martial arts.
Thank you very much.
Begin with a brief prayer, just like you did in our previous webinars.
Love to. So this is the 7-line prayer, which has a lot of outer, inner, and secret meanings, and it is certainly ancient. The tune is also ancient, so it will invoke the fact that we're carrying on a tradition that has been built upon over many generations. So I'll just invoke that then.
Wonderful. What is the meaning of this particular prayer, Lama Rangbar?
As long as we're dualistic beings, we need some inspiration. And if you're on a street, you hail a taxi. And if you're in confusion, you call wisdom. So it has to do with, although it has to do with a historical figure, Padmasambhava, the second Buddha, we could say, roughly speaking, it's not really the second, but since after Shakyamuni, this Buddha has vowed to appear in these particular times we live in now, when the 5 poisons are very strong and materialism is very dense. This is when he just does his job best, so hence that particular invocation.
And what's the relationship between this entombment or this particular invocation and the martial arts practice and the spiritual dimensions of martial arts, if you will?
The first thing is that, of course, martial art is, although it could be used for anything, it is really designed essentially to support realization, cultivation and realization and peace. So it is that in the beginning, middle, and end. Peace may also have to deal with controlling unruly situations, but that's kind of a byproduct or an accomplishment as a result of knowing oneself, self-knowledge. So then we go from there to expanding one's practice of martial art to be the best you could be, and this has to do with compassion also, because one of the best ways to stay out of trouble is not to have a huge ego. Right. Having a big ego is something like what, I mean, I don't want to stir a political hornet's nest, but when we built the World Trade Towers, in a sense, in this particular world, it was kind of asking for it. In a way, what goes up must come down. So when you stick out something which expresses a certain amount of pride or inequity, there is a great leveling machine called impermanence that tends to roam around the planet.
So, what's the difference between the World Trade Center towers that went down as compared to, for example, Petronas Towers or El Hajj? Emirates.
If you live in the East, like I did a lot, people admire America. They look up to it, and I think sometimes it also causes a lot of consternation for people who can't get here. And there's a lot of elements of the haves and have-nots which resonates deeply within those countries who also tried to emulate what we're doing. So I won't say, well, why weren't they knocked down or something like that, but I'm sure that wherever there is great opulence juxtaposed to want and desire, these things happen. It's samsara. It's all about comparison, dualistic comparison. So that's the mud we live in. And so generating bodhicitta, generating the ultimate mind of compassion is a very liberating factor. So especially even hearing these teachings or hearing this kind of discussion, if one does it from the perspective of wishing to increase one's engender bodhicitta, engender compassion, then these kind of talks will have much more effect. So I request people to consider that according to the Buddhist view, that sentient beings are as vast as space, and as many as there is space. Wherever there's space, there are countless beings who have all at one time or another been our mother or father. So to repay their kindness and to curtail their suffering, we take upon these teachings to hold these teachings for the benefit of, I suppose, several universes, if not all of them. That is the vast view.
Very nice. So coming back to the study of martial arts as the discipline dedicated to both personal development as well as a way of harmonizing with other people, how does the invocation of Padmasambhava tie together with the practice of martial arts and the study of the spiritual dimensions of martial arts?
I like that question because when you enter a dojo, maybe there's some mats, maybe not. Maybe there's a picture of some lineage holder, maybe there's something simple on the shrine. But you've entered the dojo because it doesn't have cluttered glasses and plates and tables and things which you use for your daily life. It's sparse and it's set up for a particular type of activity. And so oh, I've entered a dojo now. Even if you didn't really know anything about it, if you saw some people sitting down in a dojo and you entered in, you know something's going on, and you'd better be a little bit alert and more aware, more attentive. So an invocation is another way. Also, even when you open up martial arts, some people do this, some people do this, some people bow a certain way. So you're setting a formal structure, like a feng shui with body, speech, and mind. And so in the Tibetan tradition, then you are also, well, I won't say only the Tibetan tradition, Buddhist tradition in general, you have to use your body, your speech, and your mind. The speech in the martial arts is by and large often just the breath, the prana, how it flows naturally, sometimes controlled, but
sometimes yeah.
Sometimes talking used as a purpose, right? So in the speech pattern, we also have there's a close bridge between the speech, is a bridge between the mind that we're thinking and our body. It's the exact middle point between what arises in our mind, its formulation in terms of words or utterances or vibration, and then the nervous system and how it reacts to those vibrations. So the speech is very important, and so it is to have a formulation of wisdom and skillful means that there is such an ultimate union of those two things, method and wisdom, compassion and wisdom, we could say. To bring one's mind toward that and then begin an activity will cause a much greater clarity and even enjoyment, bliss for that activity, whatever it might be. So, that's.
So I would imagine that here we could also delve a little bit deeper into the ideas of purposefulness, acting with certain purpose and living with certain purpose, taking certain action that has certain dedication of its merit or the results of its action, and also understanding karmic connections in general, the connections between cause and effect.
Correct. And we're on a path, if we were all, I used to say there's nobody but us chickens around here. In other words, if we were all Buddhas, fully enlightened beings, we wouldn't need this notion of path. But as we do have a dualistic frame of mind, frame of reference, then going from one place to another arises, space and time arise, and so we have to form an intention to to follow a path, albeit illusory, we have to set up a process. Sometimes it's a gradual one, sometimes it's a radical, spontaneous one, but at the same time, we have to have an intention, and so all these things, martial arts, all different types of systems, are geared towards following that path, or honing down on the purpose, and opening ourselves to that ultimate realization, self-reflection, we could say, self-knowledge. We talked also about, we called this the pursuit of excellence and pursuit of harmony. This talk, which is a formulation of my teacher. It's not something, I don't think, that was necessarily written in martial arts books or something like that. But the notion is, pursuit of excellence has to do with method, has to do with trying to become better at something, or proceeding in a certain way. So it's related with compassion or method. And pursuit of harmony is related with wisdom, because things are fine the way they are, whatever they are. There's some kind of acceptance, or that's the female side. And we can't really have a good time when these things are not in union, which is what we mean by the word yoga. We mean the union of wisdom and skillful means, by and large, on the one hand, or the union with something ultimate, which is complete, like the yin-yang is a kind of an ultimate shorthand graphic art for the universe and its play, from its non-dual aspect to its initial dual aspect. So I think that the pursuit of excellence, pursuit of harmony, is very much a martial artist. We try to hone our skills. We talk about skill in martial art. And ultimately,
pursuit of excellence in martial arts is what we often refer to as mastery. In other words, we are mastering certain skills, or we are mastering ourselves, or we're becoming masterful in our expression as martial artists. Now, is this similar, or is this related to the pursuit of harmony that you're talking about?
Well, I think this kind of starts to delve into the notion of what we call the yanas, or the vehicles, where you have kind of stages where you're moving from, and it's nice flow right now because we're kind of going in stages now. I did not really do a superior job of starting from the very, very beginning and ending up at the very, very end. I did it. I'm doing it in this series with you more poetically, more in an informal style. But there is a series of vehicles, we say 9 yanas, or 9 vehicles, which are essentially something like a ladder. The lowest rung being very solid, having some hang-ups and maybe some social concerns, and then the next rung a little bit less solid, slightly more ephemeral, more subtle, and on until you get to the very top where there are actually no rungs left, and you're hanging out there in an uncontrived space. So,
well, I'm wondering if the pursuit of excellence is related to mastery. And
right.
If you're talking about mastery, then would mastery be the bridge between pursuit of excellence on one hand and pursuit of harmony on the other hand?
Well, I mean, it's a semantic discussion because you use the word mastery, so we have to talk about that, the word mastery or something. But essentially, you start, you have to, as a human, you wake up in the morning, what am I going to do? So you pick, pick a number, any number. You have to start to do something. So you're going to say, I'm going to try to do this, and that's your method. And even so, we move from pursuit of excellence in method, and hopefully, if we have a good lineage, there's going to be some background introduction of the pursuit of harmony. And when those two things are practiced as a union, when we're really getting to the point where when we invoke our skill and we open our minds to the wisdom aspect, when those things are happening as a union, like the Jewish star, right? We have we call it Dakini Gadram, means, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But when those things are practiced as a union, then we can start to talk about, well, this is mastery, or this is, the culmination of the union of of skill and wisdom. We also talked about purification methods. Just to continue the recap a little bit, we talked about purification methods. That means ways in which to remove obscurations that block us from seeing exactly what's in front of us, let's say, or distortion of the experiment. So there are purification of these four obscurations we spoke about, and maybe I'll briefly mention there are emotional obscuration, karmic obscuration, habitual tendency, and intellectual obscuration. So
yep.
We have to go through these purifications, and largely a lot of these purifications, they're not happening only in the mind, or they're happening with the reflections through the body, speech, and mind. And the mind is kind of king here, but it does need a seat. In other words, it's going to be very difficult to train these things without a body. So human birth is therefore extremely precious, because when you have it, it's a chariot. And if you use it for cultivation, it's in an ideal use of it, so we call it a precious human rebirth. If you just have a body and have a great time, it's not precious. It's just a wasted opportunity, perhaps. Or if you like that, that's fine too. There's no real judgment about it. But
well, if you're having a good time, like you said, maybe you're enjoying the ride, and so that's an excellent way to live free of suffering. In
True.
other words, you're already in nirvana, if nirvana is the state of being free from suffering.
If it's complete, but then one would have to be ready to not complain when the joyride was over and something else took its place. One would have to be equanimous enough to accept the suffering as equally poignant, and part of the deal. So something like that.
Well, that's the path of the spiritual warrior, isn't it? We learn how to accept where we're at and quit whining, because you can be a whiner and a spiritual warrior at the same time. The way that my friend, one of the friends of mine who I was practicing martial arts with for a while, used to say, Kung Fu masters don't whine.
Well said. So we also spoke about Sa Lung, therefore. We spoke about the nerve, wind, and seed essence. And we kind of left off, touching on Tumo, the heat yoga, and we didn't really go into that, but it's a type of purification. And again, these things, to talk about them intellectually is just to lay out a little bit of a roadmap. To talk about Tumo and to do it are very different things. So, but essentially, just to touch base on it, it's an atomic method. It's a nuclear method. It's a way of bringing the wisdom and skillful means together with inside one's alchemy. And so it is. I would say it's even subatomic. It is quantum in its nature, and so the transformation occurs on a macrocosmic and microcosmic level. I mean, I guess I don't know if this is correct, but maybe as an analogy, a fusion reaction, where you're kind of forcing the wisdom and skillful means, or creating the circumstances, not forcing, but creating the circumstances where they naturally join each other. It is a way of gaining mastery of the male and female essences inside ourselves. So, like that.
Very good. So, developing this level of mastery obviously requires some degree of purification, and you mentioned Tumo practice, which has to do with the generation of inner heat, and of course, inner heat is not really the objective of the practice, it's just the side effect of the practice.
Right.
Would you walk us a little bit deeper into the practice of Tumo and perhaps give us a little bit of a taste of it?
That's a tall order. I think when you break a sweat, when you're working out and you break a sweat, it's kind of mystical. You wonder, well, at what point does your body decide that it's got to cool itself down and it's going to, employ this method of the pores opening up and some liquid pouring out, and a kind of at what point does the body decide that it needs to have its cooling system kick in? And it's funny because as we work out and heat up the body, and some traditions don't do that very much, and some traditions do it more than others, but we used to work out, and really the workout began only when you had soaked your t-shirt. You know, when you were totally drenched, that's when your workout had started, and that already takes conceivably, you know, an hour or two to get to that state where you're drenched.
Depends on the intensity of the workout, of course.
It does, yeah.
5 minutes.
But, you know, to really soak yourself, you know, and depends on the temperature outside, I guess, too, and how much you drank, whatever. But the point I'm making is that at a certain point, you can feel a nerve. There's a certain kind of nerve. I don't know if it's exactly the location of the Tantien or whatever, but there's a kind of trigger point where it's almost like if I stuck a feather up your nose, you know, there'll be a point where you might sneeze. There's something going to happen. So there's a point at which the nerve starts to register that heat is become exothermic. The point, like you said very well, the point is not to develop heat. You can just buy a heater if that was the point and save yourself a lot of time and energy. But the point is that the point is that you are that heat, or wisdom, the wisdom fire in this case, is a purifying process, a distillation process. It's like a candle. You know, you light the candle, it burns the wax, and it radiates out luminosity. And so it's a process of taking a dumb, gross material and changing it into luminosity, or which has the qualities of awareness, clarity, and bliss in it. It's good for people to understand, you know, to separate out fantasy from the reality of the path. A lot of people try these things or think when they read about it that they know what it is, and that's enough, and you know, the intellectual thing, I know what it is, and it's just very far from the actual practice of having the stability to actually do these things. They're not one and the same.
Well, I know some Qigong masters, or Qigong teachers, I should say, that integrate a little bit of Tumo into their teachings just on the very basic level. And they just say, well, this is a warming up exercise. This is going to keep you warm if it's cold out there, and you may also use it, you know, if you, for example, decide to do like a polar bear dunk in the water. Okay.
Right. So this, yeah, I mean, and the beautiful thing about it is that, you know, in its correct light, you can, you know, you don't have to go into all this mystical part of it. You can do that. You can keep it simple. So, but I was hoping, you know, I thought I would indulge and try to give it in the context of the ultimate pursuit. And then, along with these kind of practices like Tumo, we spoke a little bit about sexual practice, or something where I made a joke about some Lama saying, well, Tantra is not some kind of sex or magic, and my friend saying to me, oh, we're in the wrong place, let's get out of here.
Right, and so obviously, as we delve into a little bit more into the discussion about the tantric aspects of martial arts, and obviously not many martial arts have tantric aspects. Some, probably few, Tibetan martial arts delve into that deeper than others. We can even understand that you really can create enlightening and mutually empowering relationships with people through the practice of martial arts. So you don't even have to formally engage in study of Tantra. You can experience the benefits of recognition of each other's true nature, and also using each other as a mirror that shows to you your own blind spot, so to speak.
it's funny because I'm heading toward this just slight discussion of union practice or something like that, and in fact, the sparring in our school anyway has a lot of fluid and feeling to it, and Tui Chu is the name of when we say sparring, we say Tui Chu, which means sharing of sweat, exchange of sweat. You're going to get sweaty together. There's some touching going on, and there's a feeling going on. The nerves are interacting. It's not sexual union. But what's happening is there is
no exchange of body fluids.
There is a there is a yin-yang movement going on there. There is a dialogue. There is a give and take happening. And that is in itself part of the process. That is also part of a type of distillation using someone else. Now later, since sex is one of the things that happens in human condition, it's not about pursuing one's need, the fulfillment of one's selfish needs. Actually, it has to do with the process of slowing down the karmic wind. So, for example, basically, we're hardwired for this biological function, eating food, getting fat and getting sugar and getting these kind of things, and fight and flight responses, and union to procreate. These are very much part of our bottom line hardwiring. And so we tend to, be a lot controlled by those things. They motivate. For example, sometimes I would go around with this fellow, a friend of mine from Bhutan, who's very good at divinations, and people like that kind of thing. They like to ask a question and find out. And they would talk about questions about their career, and they would talk about questions of the place they lived in and how they could get a better house and, maybe a better car, a better job, better food. And it always boiled down to the boyfriend or the girlfriend at the end of the day. It always got there. It always reached there. Like, well, I'm not sure if I like this guy, or if he's, or if I like this girl, and how can I get her, or whatever it is, or I don't have a mate, something like that. It always, 9 times out of 10, when the people really got finished with all their, the reason they wanted the car was to have a better house so that they could have a mate in the house, or, it was A to B to C to D, and the Z was the X, when they finally got there. What I'm saying is a very basic primordial aspect of human in this gender separation, whether and I'm not going to get into, for example, same gender unions or something. The bottom line is that each has their own male and female essences inside. Whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter. So this wish, this primordial wish that the sun and moon unite inside ourselves, is played out dramatically in front of us with a partner of some kind. Important to understand, when we talk about these spontaneous qigongs that you were talking about, for example,
yeah.
That looks chaotic, but it's not. It's very natural. It's a kind of systematized unsystematization, something like that.
The distinction between chaos and cosmos is part of ancient Greek philosophy, and the philosophers figured basically that chaos is uncomfortable and unpredictable and not very easy to handle. So they created the mythology in which the gods formed chaos into cosmos, or in other words, they organized chaos in such a way that it became easier to handle. And when you are a martial artist, for example, or when you're a human being in general, if you are easy to handle, then usually you are very predictable and you are easy to set up for a trap or for defeat in martial arts situation. Now, if you are more spontaneous and you are thriving in chaos instead of struggling to organize it, then you are virtually invincible because you are going with the flow of things in the nature without trying to organize it according to a certain preconceived idea into the form of cosmos, so to speak.
Mm. Right.
I wonder if you would go a little bit deeper into understanding of karma and how the martial artists would be able to experience higher levels of enlightenment by understanding the cause and effect connections. And perhaps also transcend karma at some point in their spiritual development.
We talk about mastery. Now, I think the word mastery is interesting here to apply it a little bit, because when you think of a master, you think of a servant. I mean, if there's someone, a master is something which, for example, a master disc is something where you would make copies from it. A master is maybe a master of a dog. Maybe self-mastery. In other words, you are becoming superlative. So in the case of karma, people come to Buddhist priests to complain about their karma, essentially. You know, their karma is ripening on them, and it hurts, or it's not what they want. It's not happening. The fruit that they're after is not ripening the way they want it to ripen. It's like saying, you go to an apple tree and you say, well, why isn't there a ripe pear on this tree? I'm very frustrated with this. And you ask the priest, well, what's going on? And he said, well, you know, you planted an apple tree here, and the pears are there. That's what's going on. And here's a new seed, and you should plant this one, and eventually you'll have a pear if that's what turns you on. The karma is ripening, and this is a problem. It's uncomfortable for people. So, and not only that, we're kind of under it. It's mastered us. We are under the mastery of karma. In other words, it's taking us around, and it's none too pleasant a ride, and it's our own doing, and we don't know it. So there's a whole bunch of things compounded, which makes it very pathetic in a way. So when we start to understand, well, what is karma? How does it start to function? And we start to check out this reflective nature of the mind. And I talked to you, I think, last time about the different type of monkeys in the mirror. Did I say something about that?
Well, we've talked about monkeys on several occasions. So.
Okay. Let me just revisit it briefly. So a small rhesus monkey looking in a mirror for the first time will, you know, have a shock and you know, perhaps escalate a slight threatening visage, you know, and the one in the mirror also does that, and then, you know, it escalates, and eventually the monkey will either run away or attack the mirror, whatever. This is
fight or flight.
Fight or flight. So, yeah, but the principle is that he's not recognizing that it's him in the mirror. So the reaction to the karma, all these karmic consequences that we've made, and the way we're perceiving the things in front of us as separate from our own continuum, is a distortion. And the distortion is that we're not recognizing the mirror surface. We're not really understanding this is our own karmic reflection. And so we play with it, and we will have a fight or flight, either fight or flight. We might have even a kind of, you know, sexy engagement with it, in a sense of, I want a desirous engagement with that image. So it's not only fight or flight, it has to do with, you know, attraction, rejection, or ignorance. But the bottom point is that getting to know about the karma, understanding it, is the path of the person who is one of the main requisites, is to start to understand how karma is created, how it's made, how it can be purified, or how its influence can be pacified, and then understanding that to some extent or another, then one's merit, basically, I would say one's wisdom. We talk about two accumulations. I think it's good to touch on this, that the accumulation of merit and wisdom are what we would say are called the two accumulations. And merit has to do with having released enough territory by the practice of benevolence, let's say, by altruistic, outgoing, releasing behavior, magnanimous, open behavior, not defensive behavior. And that merit eventually leads to wisdom, where this whole system, this whole Hazarai, whatever you call it, this whole gestalt of buying and selling food and cars and places and all these things we're chasing around, should eventually lead to a civilization where fight or flight is not really the key, and one can relax to understand the nature of one's own mind and live in harmony. That's the kind of ultimate societal fruit. If you took it, the individual cultivation and then the group cultivation, you should be able to arrive at a conclusion of peace in society. The martial arts should be one of the stages of starting to recognize, giving yourself the prerequisite strengths and resiliences and versatility in one's own bodily instrument, body, speech, and mind, to eventually come to the point of this higher functionality, more refined, less duped by the reflection, the distortions in the reflection in the mirror of our phenomena. So this means that eventually, by those purifications, by understanding the karma, we can come to a point where we could cross into discussions of practice of Dzogchen, great perfection. And great perfection is kind of one of the last yanas of these 9 yanas that we come to, the final top 3, Maha, Anu, and Ati. And in the top one, which is the Ati Yoga, and we talk about Dzogchen there, and there are a lot of, again, classifications in the Ati Yoga, the highest yoga. But in that last moment, we're kind of transcending karma. We're not really talking about cause and effect anymore. We're not talking about a vehicle which is like, I push this vehicle down the street and it goes down the street, or it pulls me down the street, or therefore I'm pulled. We're out of the cause and effect yanas now, and we're into what's called the causal yana, the resultant yana. So we're coming to a vehicle where we're starting at the kind of ultimate point of recognition of non-duality, of recognizing the nature of the mind, nature, self-nature. And like I said, it could happen quickly in very advanced individuals with that kind of proclivity or propensity, or more often than not, it's a process of hard work and a path, traversing a path over one's lifetime, putting a lot of effort into it. And then you'll have a distilled alcohol of realization from those processes. So I think, and I wanted to put that out there because people hear Dzogchen and they want to hear the Dzogchen teachings right away. I think I mentioned that there's good reason for that. I think we're intelligent. Maybe we have the right to know, well, where was this boat headed? Where should it be headed? Where could it be headed? At the same time, we should be willing to put in the time, to put in the hours and the intentionality, perseverance, all the investments necessary. It's not going to be handed to us just because we're entitled little brats. It's going to come because we're ready to pay the price to get to know ourselves. So I just want to say that, and because we did touch upon Dzogchen, and there's a lot of talk about being beyond cause and effect when you discuss Dzogchen, that can be misinterpreted that everything's empty and it's kind of a glib conclusion. And here's the 2 problems. If you do all these relative practices with no view of the ultimate emptiness, of the ultimate nature of the mind, you will be hindered in your growth. And if you don't have the view, if the view has not been introduced properly to you in a way that you can see that and recognize that and get a taste of that, you're in trouble. And if you hanker on the view and think, well, all this relative is not there, that it doesn't have any effect, and I don't have to brush my teeth because there's no such thing as a rotting tooth, that's just a concept, eventually you won't be able to eat your food, and you will be starving, and you'll die a death of starvation with all its inherent suffering. So, in other words, to lose one's relative conduct in this vast, expansive view is demonic. To not have the view is unfortunate. So we have to practice the view and the conduct together. This is again back to this Dakini triangle, this Jewish star, and the meaning of that symbol is you're ascending with the conduct. That means practices and cultivation and whatnot, and the way you conduct yourself, your pursuit of excellence maybe, and then the descend with the view. So these things, these triangles are kind of penetrating through each other. And we're practicing these two things as a union. Padmasambhava's teaching is that we're practicing the descending of wisdom and the ascending of conduct. Again, this is pictorial. It's a graphic way of talking about it, kind of like a metaphor. So the yeah, I mean, all these symbols, the Jewish star, the swastika. I mean, it's a very funny thing, you know. When you wear the swastika, if you were to put the, I mean, it's on a lot of Tibetan thrones, right? Certainly long before Hitler ever came along. So the swastika, there's swastika and salvastika. One is rotating. One represents rotation to the solar side, and one is rotating the opposite to the lunar side. Each of these symbols is very, very, very specific in the type of content or what it's indicating on the meditative way. And the star is like that, and the swastika is like that. It's not something you can preempt for your own political uses. These symbols, by the way, appear in meditation. When you go to a certain point in your meditation, these things are naturally arising. They are not only just a kind of, you know, we have good graphic artists who make nice logos and you know, kind of come up with ways of expressing something using a logo. This is something that, you know, really is a primordially inherent kind of design, maybe a structure in nature, let's say. We come to a point where we're going to start to talk a little bit about individual chi and universal chi. Okay, so let's go there now. And this is very valid for martial artists. You have to, as a baby, your chi is kind of pretty accurate. I mean, when you cry and cough and kick and pee, everything is kind of pretty intense. You know, it's pretty accurate. It's pretty clean, and it starts to become formulated in society. You know, society kind of gets it going in a certain kind of way, and a lot of as we grow up, we become crusty and stiff in our ways of thinking, programmed, and etc. So the universal chi, again, when we practice, again, come to the age where we're practicing martial arts. Let's say we don't start when we're very young, but maybe after 8 years old or something. The kid wants to exercise the yang, you know, and feel it, and you know, make it move, and it's a fascination with a rough chi, a rough individual chi. The identity's developing. What makes that? Where do they end, and where does something else begin? I mean, kids are always testing the border between who they are and what the phenomena is. That's why when one kid sticks his finger in another kid's mouth and the kid bites it, you know, to see, well, what's going to happen here. Mm-hmm. So what is going on? It's not that they're cruel; they're just experimenting with this phenomena that they're in. So there's a process of developing a healthy ego, a healthy notion, I'm this and they're that, and there's something developmentally correct about that. And that others have pain, for example, that there's a role in society, how we relate to people. And then we have to start to cross back from that intense materialization and dualization where the notion of self and others starts to increase to the extent where you could have a war or want to kill somebody or, you know, hate your neighbor, for example. So we come to a stage where, again, we have to back down and we have to start to take a better look. So the martial art process introduced into society at the right age, for example, you can start to understand, okay, I have my individual chi, and I'm going to refine that, because when I refine it, I become a little bit more skillful in this dialogue petri dish called the dojo. And then you start to become aware of a subtle chi, more these subtle impulses, how your mental continuum and your body continuum are linked in a subtle way, and what that means. What is brute energy? What is conservative behavior in Qi, for example, fluid behavior. And then slowly, we graduate one notch there. And then we have to graduate another notch where, again, we're going to be talking about our identity. And this is very important. We come to a discussion of identity now.
And what do you call identity? Or what is your
so, for example, maybe you punch me in the nose and I'm upset for a few reasons. One is that it's painful. The other is that something's happened which compromised my sense of identity, because I was supposed to preserve my nose, and that didn't happen. Especially in society, I might be humiliated because that person punched me, and as a man, I'm not supposed to let that happen, and he got one over on me, and so all of a sudden, a whole bunch of other identity factors come into it, clinging about ego, things like this. So the, there are many subtle aspects of identity, and to purify that, in the Tibetan system, again we go back to the Mahayoga, down from the top one to one of the two others, the Maha and Anu. So in the Mahayoga, we're identifying with the deity. We're taking on his realm and practicing a deity yoga, identifying with this.
With a deity, integrate the deity into your identity?
In a sense, you are practicing that deity. We say Vajra pride. Vajra is unbreakable, adamantine. Pride is a kind of notion of identity. So it's not a fragile identity of this human being which is made of aggregates, which is so easily disturbed. It's easily broken into pieces. It's easily humiliated. The emotions are screwed up, and Vajra pride is when you're identifying with the cosmic principle, which is non-dual, and so it is a way of purifying one's habitual tendency to grasp onto material object, subject object, and freeze on that, and give a lot of criteria. What is it? A lot of importance onto those things, and to dissolve that fixation onto the physical aspects, so that one becomes more vast in one's mind, more compassionate and easygoing, to the point where it's funny, to the point where you're just not. You're not perturbed. You're not easily duped. Like you said, it's ultimate type of flexibility. The identification process, whether one chooses a small individual identity based on who your family members are, your loved ones, how fat you are, how skinny you are, how handsome, how cute, how ugly, whatever it is, between those kind of things and a more vast identification of love, non-referential compassion, for example, or openness, that is created by the intention of creating bodhicitta. This new opening or blossoming of the wisdom is very important as a kind of destination, you could say. I'm not saying we have to hanker on that too much, but it is, in this day and age right now, very critical for the health of our planet, because we have a situation where, of course, our population is so increased, the density of people's confusion, Wi-Fi, radio, microwave, whatever it is, thought wave, density of mental traffic, TV, news, whatever, the bombardments, it's very intense. So how is one going to filter out all these criteria so that it doesn't become a poisonous flesh, a toxic life? And so the universal chi is very important right now. The ultimate martial artist right now is, the bully next door is the least of your worries. The worst he can do is give you a bloody nose. Maybe give you a broken leg if he's a real, psychopath. But the bully next door is not the problem. It's ourselves. We're really now come up against ourselves. We're going to make it as a society or perish as a society. So the warriorship of the individual nowadays, let's say you go to work. You work in a corporation. Okay? There's a team of people. They're trying to accomplish the profitability of the corporation, right? They have board meetings. They decide the best ways to go about that, and the ant colony kicks out anyone who's not with the program, right? That means if they're not with the program, it means they're a virus. So then the antibodies come out, right? So the corporation will fire people who are not with the program if it's healthy. So similarly, our society has to come to a point where we realize all of us on the planet, we have to cooperate with each other. It is the ultimate challenge of your martial arts to be of benefit to the society, because that is where the martial arts sciences return to nature through the society. And that's what their purpose is, actually. That is the full completion of the cycle.
Well, I understand that the bully next door may not be our main point of concern. However, a couple of people asked me since we started the webinar program on spiritual dimensions in martial arts about what to do with a level of violence associated with, for example, shootings of the people who are completely disconnected from the shooter. In other words, the terrorist attacks or the psychopaths that start shooting automatic weapons in the malls or schools or whatever. What do you do about that? And how does the spiritual warriorship would put us on the correct path in terms of relating to this type of events in our lives?
Perfect. Great question. Knee-jerk reaction maybe of some people is to put armed guards in the schools, maybe in movie theaters too, because we want the right to bear arms or whatever. Another knee-jerk reaction would be take guns away from everybody. But neither of those two things really addresses the problem, actually. If people are having these kind of illnesses, then you should address the illness with the proper medicine. I would say it would be more important to start to look at the broken social structure which enabled a person to grow up not being able to differentiate between reality or any certain sense of cause and effect, maybe not be able to differentiate between the yin environment of the computer screen and the yang environment that's outside. This is like the cancer cell, showing up on the street. So you really have to start to talk about how our society, what is it doing as a whole? What kind of messages is it giving? How are we training the youth? Which means martial art is a great medicine here. I would dare say that martial artists who practice properly, although they might look like they're doing something violent, like punching each other and throwing each other or whatever, those are the people who have understood what violence really is and how to be nonviolent.
So in other words, you don't hear about martial arts practitioners going out and shooting with automatic or semi-automatic assault rifles dozens of people. Those are usually the individuals who spend their days playing violent computer games or somehow else get involved into the mental mind stream associated with it's okay to shoot because I don't see the consequence that will follow. So
yes, so this the treatment system has to be something with the mind. It has to be something where an individual, especially the youth, I mean, we really have to talk about the youth now. If there are already people on the street who have come to that stage where they can do that kind of thing, it's going to be hard to repair them. We're talking about next generations moving forward. We always have to be forward thinking. But we have to really talk about the youth and how to, love them, how to give them time. Because a lot of parents are really not giving the kids any time. They don't even know their kids have guns, maybe some of them, or that they're making crack in the basement or whatever. They just don't even know it. So the thing is that the answer is tries to bring some awareness into the schools, like a meditation awareness, maybe a mind break for a few minutes, or teaching them a little bit about meditation. Now, and it comes back to the stupa, that the stupa project. So we want to make this great mandala for world peace. This is an architecture, a kind of feng shui, if you will, a geomantic approach to our planet and its woes. It's a symbolic representation which eventually embodies the energy it symbolizes. So making something like that, bodhisattva warriors, so to speak, and that could be anyone. I think anyone who decides that they want to make this planet healthy and is willing to work on themselves and take some responsibility aside from their own family, but to really look at the society and really grow up a little bit, take responsibility, would enjoy joining hands with other people of like mind, even to make a pile of sand that says, this is our vote for the fact that we do recognize we are interdependent, that we are linked together, and we should try to act that way for the betterment or benefit of all. So that kind of feng shui, that kind of on the planet, this big monument we want to make, a mandala with a dome and a spire, which is basically built by everybody for peace. You remember I did the big sleeve movement the other day?
Yes, of course.
Called Tai Chi Chu. Yeah, so the Tai Chi Chu is one of the movements, a process of graduating from this individual chi to a kind of more vast chi. In a martial arts situation, you might have a fist, you might have some kind of small circles of energy which are tight. This is an individual. But the real fighting occurs when you're just standing very peacefully and can just move without so much defensive mechanisms. And these kind of movements can be trained with more vast movements, more open and flowing. You're not dealing with something so localized. And so I think, for example, ping pong. Mm-hmm. You go back and forth with ping pong, and it gets in a rhythm, and the one who wins is actually the ones who can kind of break the rhythm at the right moment. When you're doing a martial art movement and you use a vast universal chi, it's a chi which is not perceived by the small-minded, individualistic person, right? And if the other person is able to be equally as vast, well, then it's more like a dialogue between lovers than it is a fight, because they would appreciate.
They're functioning more or less on the same level, or at least they're on the same page, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. We keep training our bodies because it's important to eventually get our nervous system in tune, vibratorily in tune with the ways of the universe, so to speak, not just in an intellectual way, but in a physical way. And that's why, the ultimate is the rainbow body, and that's when the body dissolves, and that all that's left is fingernail and hair. When the meditator reaches the point where his or her body, the aggregates are dissolving into luminosity.
I wonder why hair and fingernails would be left, because those are actually part of the living tissue. Why not, for example, some tissue that's not living, let's say crap?
When one is coming to that level of subtlety, you don't need to have the gross elements in your intestines at that point. We're talking about a very... the fingernails are protein,
Exactly.
Type of protein. And hair protein and things like that. In some cases, in some types of rainbow body, I believe those are also able to be taken, a higher one even. But I'm not an expert in that. I didn't go rainbow body, so I wouldn't know.
Well, if you go rainbow body, the facial hair will also be left behind.
Uh, there is a proof to this ultimate union, this ultimate returning, let's say, returning to a pure vibration, let's say. And you know, I could bring it up, and some people will say, "Oh, that just discredited everything else you said. That's too phantasmagorical or whatever." So one will we'll have to leave it up to these people's practice.
I will also make a brief announcement. I will go a little bit more in depth about it at the end of our meeting tonight. But I'm planning on offering an online coaching program dedicated to dream yoga. And I am teaching it in a very unorthodox way. And it actually has a lot to do with the rainbow body, or you can also talk about it in terms of dream body. And so we will be exploring what the meaning of the dream body is, how to become aware of it, and also how to integrate the awareness of the dream body into your daily life so that your daily life and your dreams are not separate any longer. And you learn how to awaken not only in your dreams at night, becoming lucid, but also awaken in the big dream that we call our daily life.
That's a very helpful, by the way, you know, in this conversation, those who want to actual practice to what we've been discussing, that's a very good entry point for them, I think, because this dream yoga can help to graduating one's chi from individual to universal chi. So I think it's a very good, appropriate offering for people to try to take advantage of that, I think.
Fantastic. Well, I definitely understand how the subjects of spiritual dimensions of martial arts and the dream yoga tie together. Even though it is not quite apparent for a lot of people, it is totally apparent to me because I've trained many people as martial artists. And at some point, some of them said, well, how can I progress further if I don't want to do meditations and this dream practices that you're talking about? I say, well, you can't really progress a lot further without those because you are getting to be aware of your dream body. But without dream yoga practice, you can't do much about it. Most advanced feats of power in martial arts, as well as the feats of Qigong masters and great yogis, can be easily understood from point of view of using the dream body either in conjunction with the physical body or integrate the dream body into the physical body. Then many of the skills that you develop in your dream body can become available in your physical body as well. They utilize the abilities of the dream body, even though they look as though they are in the physical body. So it's essentially using the double for performing the stunts.
Yeah. Good.
There must be some connection between the Shambhala tradition on one hand and your teachings on the other hand. What would you share with us about it?
Actually, there are different streams of revelations which have prophecies associated with them, etc. So somehow, is one of the lines of practices that I do, that I'm engaged in, for example. I think I can send you a package by Federal Express. It can come in a number of different kind of boxes, you know. It could come in a small box, a big box, a square box, a hexagonal box, whatever. But the message is the message. And so in the case of Trungpa Rinpoche or Gesar or Shambhala, for example, a lot of these prophecies are or metaphoric indications of signposts that we're going to be experiencing in our continuum. So if they are revealed in the clothing of Gesar, for example, the Shambhala kind of tradition, and the reason I'm saying this, laying it bare like this, is so that one doesn't become too fixated either on a particular tradition also. I covered this, you know, by talking about this movement to universal chi and also a discussion of, responsibility of people to understand our interdependence and to take the time and perform certain responsibilities that brings our sciences, our methods, and our wisdom back into the society, returning it to society as a gift. That it's not enough just to get what you want, eat, make a nice house, and say, I'm so great, I'm so fat, and I did it, and money is my God, and whatever. It's not enough. You have to return something. You have to work. You have to help the planet that you're in. I mean, it's a logical conclusion. You have to give back. You have to heal. You have to become a grown-up. Shambhala path has to do with this topic I'm addressing of bringing the sciences back through the society in order to cure problems like this, the people who open fire in a movie theater or whatnot. We're talking about those kind of things. We're talking about the stupa, grand symbol of humanity's interdependence, that will really be a fulcrum point for people on a mass scale to start to have the seeds of self-reflection. Trungpa Rinpoche was wonderful in how he kind of cut to the chase and really did the down and dirty, nasty things necessary to get into our society and try to present the materials in a very straightforward kind of, not too phantasmagorical a manner, a practical manner. I think he did a great service to our country, actually.
I agree. And I would like to ask you another question about the stupa and perhaps other aspects of martial arts. I received an email from one of our listeners who was asking me what's the relationship between the spiritual aspects of martial arts and related disciplines on one hand and feng shui on the other hand.
I was just at a Vietnamese temple. Somehow the word had leaked. I was teaching at a temple in Orlando, and somehow the word had leaked that I was good at feng shui or something like that. And so they asked me they were having some difficulties in the temple, and they wanted to know, if the feng shui could be changed to remedy that. And I had just finished giving a Dharma talk, and my mind was brought to a moment where I was traveling with an important Lama from Bhutan, and we were blessing some houses somewhere. And we were in a house which is a total mess. I mean, it was like a train wreck. And we could even say, I guess, for lack of a better word, let's say poetically, that one of the kid was slightly possessed, And we did the blessing in the house. And afterwards, I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I said, the way your house is arranged, you're asking for it. And I proceeded and I said, if you want to, I can give you some suggestions. They said yes, and I went around doing that. At which point the Lama who was with me became furious and said, I think he was generally upset with the state of the house in general and the state of the child as well. But I got a good, strong admonishment that, I was, after the blessing of the house, which is a very high vibratory rate, I started to go into, readjust the foundation again. And so that's not cool, not a right sequence. He said, next time you do that first, then we end up with the higher, the blessing part. So when I was teaching at this temple, I had just finished that, and then they asked me about the feng shui, and I laughed, saying, well, now I feel a little bit like I'm, going backwards here. However, the point being that the foundation of anything comes first, and then you build on it. And then eventually you put a roof with the ornaments. So that's true for our practice, our body, speech, and mind, starting out with physical practices, disciplines, and training of the mind, and then eventually the ultimate realization. It's also true in the sense that feng shui, for example, it is very useful. Brushing your teeth is useful because it stops your teeth from falling out, and feng shui is useful because, for example, it's easier to skate on a skateboard going downhill than it is uphill. If things are stacked in the right way, you're going to get better results for you. The body, the way you position your meditation seat, how you talk to people in a business setting. There are many things that basically could work for you or against you. The same goes for the configuration of planets or movements of astrological bodies, the moon, and whatnot. So there are all these sciences we call branch sciences, which arise because we live in this. We believe in sharp corners. We have a table that has a surface on it, and the feng shui is. And the way I learned it was also very strange. I think I told you in previous episodes about how my teacher instilled the ability to crush pebbles into one of the students just by a mental suggestion. Well, they're competitive in Indonesia, and with martial arts, and so one school was breaking bricks and whatnot, and the person from our school was never trained to break bricks, and so he came back sheepishly and said, "I'm looking bad in front of these other people," and my teacher gave a mental suggestion that breaking bricks is easy, but to turn a pebble into dust is difficult. But you can do that. You can do that. And with that suggestion, all of a sudden he was able to, take a stone and just hit it like that and turn it into powder. When we went back and showed that to them, and they were all very impressed and shut up and didn't boast anymore. But he was stuck doing that for a long time for some reason after that, until the teacher said you can't do it anymore, in which case he was unable. So in the case of Feng Shui, I was really interested in Feng Shui. My teacher, I think he said to me, "You can do that. You know that already." He just revealed, "You know that already." He said that. And then he gave a talk to the group, but a totally unrelated topic. I think it had to do with helicopters and dropping materials and I don't know, some kind of military movements or something. I don't know what he was talking about. But I was hearing a talk on Feng Shui. But I had a lot of doubt in my mind. And when he finished, I went up to him and I said, "So, when are you going to teach me about Feng Shui?" And he looked at me and he said, "I just spent 3 hours teaching you about Feng Shui. You didn't get it?" I said, "Oh, I did. I just wasn't that confirmed about it." So he was teaching everybody a totally different topic and sneaking in this. I don't know how he did it exactly, but anyway, there it was. It's a kind of continuum, a multidimensional continuum. So that's how I got the little amount I have. I think it's a use it or lose it kind of thing. I don't know how to use one of those lontar, the compass or anything, but it's enough to know the basics to I call it emergency Feng Shui.
That's Feng Shui triage.
Yeah, yes, right. And at the same time, it's very helpful. I mean, you can really avoid a whole bunch of, cure a whole bunch of problems that need not happen.
Even more interesting thing is to learn how to adapt to the flow of things. Those people who can't adapt to the flow and try to manipulate the environment so that the environment would match their internal desires or expectations are bound to end up disappointed because life does not meet our expectations by definition. And when we learn how to adapt to the flow of things, to the environment, to the energetic makeup of the land, of the buildings that we live in, or the food that we eat, or the weather that we deal with, people that we encounter, we actually stop struggling against the flow. And then we actually become healthy and happy because we're in the flow now. And there is nothing healthier than being in flow. So what I often observe is that people are getting so obsessed about Feng Shui because they don't recognize that it's a bandage, a remedy of sorts. They're just trying to bandage the injuries that they have instead of learning how to heal them.
I think that's a reasonable to say. Not too far off. It's just it's any extreme is not going to work. Too much concern with it, and also not addressing it at all is not good either. I saw some people in Nepal, they were sleeping on the road. They kind of decided the road was a nice place to sleep. You know, it was, I granted it was 4 in the morning, but 4 or 5 in the morning, but you know, the traffic would start up eventually, and it was flat and clean, you know, the road, and so they slept on it, and I thought that was bad feng shui, you know. So you know, sometimes it's good to pay attention to, it's good to know about it a little bit. I think it's not bad, and I think it also can be very, very, especially in a place of business or your home, to arrange it in a way that you're not fighting it so much. It's not bad to put some effort there, and moreover, like with the stupa, in terms of the stupa, you said, and there is probably good reason for that, and I think it has to do with the, I mean, you can feel it when you go from New York City and you go further and further into the country. There's some kind of change in the energy density that you experience if you're sensitive to it. You can
And
even
eventually you see the sign that says America starts here.
eventually you're at the Canadian border, and when you cross that border, you cross into a different collective karma. It's the Canadian way of life, and you feel different. You cross over from Vermont to New Hampshire, you feel it, because each government has a border and a different view, different collective karma. So the stupa placement, aside from its political seat in New York, let's say, is on the East Coast, which has a lot of certain type of dense, frenetic financial activity, major currents of financial activity, and I suppose its own amount of desperation as well. And so the stupa is designed to transform the density of that energy into a luminosity, into an uplifted, expansive, hopeful. I think it's very good for the economy, by the way. It's one of the effects of a stupa is that wherever it goes, the economy booms.
Well, it would make sense to build a stupa in Washington, D.C. then.
Probably not a bad place. Not a bad place for a stupa, provided the powers that be would let you do it on any kind of scale. You know.
It would.
You know,
I had a project about 20 years ago of building a stupa in downtown Moscow, Russia, and that project didn't work out because my mentor at that time, Jinsei Terasawa, who was well known for building stupas, got blacklisted by the FSB, the new version of KGB, and we basically bagged the project for the time being. But the idea of building a stupa in such a central location of a capital that makes a lot of important decisions or critical choices, I think it would be a very good idea.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would like to again direct people to the website for the stupa, because it's one of the ways we can all work together. I think we're going to find that it's going to really mature in the way we talk about it, in the way that people can relate to it and join the project. So people should keep a finger on the pulse. Go to the website now and again, www.bodhivastu, B-O-D-H-I-V as in Victor, A-S-T-U.org, bodhivastu.org. And Vastu also means Feng Shui. Basically, it's the temple layout. You know, Vastu has to deal with the temple layouts, an array or a realm. So Bodhi means compassionate, enlightened array. Let's say we can say Bodhivastu is an enlightened in society, an enlightened array, an enlightened phenomena on this planet. So I hope people join that phenomena. You don't have to be a New Yorker. You can be from California or Hawaii, from Russia or wherever, because it's a world. The scale of it's so big. It's a world Feng Shui we're talking about, an acupuncture point on the earth, if you will. Once the stupa is also erected, one can paint it once in a while. You know, give it a fresh coat of paint or offer some prayer flags. There are many approaches, offering incense to it, whatnot. But in this case, particularly if you contribute while the land is being purchased, And while this stupa is being built, it is a seed cause which goes on for millennia, creating merit. And so that kind of goes on your account in terms of the stream of things. It's an opportunity, basically, for people to become magnanimous, and it's far better to give than to receive. You feel better when you give, and you do join into the continuum of what you give to. And I think
also there is a certain flow of energy associated with giving and receiving. So you can't really receive much if you're not giving. You start hoarding energy instead of allowing the flow to continue flowing.
Exactly. It's a practice, an opportunity, and it does really open one's heart, and it helps people to recognize our interdependence and to be humble and to be loving. Work for the benefit of others. Everybody is a spiritual warrior if they want to be. It's just a question of intention and recognition of it. Help humanity get over its problems and to attain mastery and realization for their long life so that they can continue to do what they're doing for the benefit of humanity, and also for everybody to have realizations, peace to increase, and for their sufferings to decrease, and for us to partake in that as a unified field, let's say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lama Rangbar. It has been a great pleasure to have you on our series of webinars, the Masters of the Month webinars. And I want to conclude our event today by inviting our viewers to engage in supporting the great peace stupa, the Bodhivasta stupa, by participating in the Dream Yoga program. 20% from all the proceeds that come from registrations for this Dream Yoga program will be donated to the Bodhivasta Stupa project. The Dream Yoga program is dedicated to learning how to start really living your dreams. It's dedicated to transforming your dreams by waking up in them, waking up to the true nature of your experiences while you're dreaming. So you're going to learn how to awaken in the dreams rather than just awakening from the dreams, which can empower you to get a lot more creative in your dreams, as well as manifest the dreams that you would like to experience in your daily life. You can also learn how to quite literally live your dreams, including the dream called daily life, more consciously, more creatively, and with greater harmony. And I invite you to register for the Dream Yoga Coaching Program by going to dreamyogacoaching.eventbrite.com. And once again, dreamyogacoaching.eventbrite.com. And when you register, 20% of your registration payment will be donated to the Great Peace Stupa, the Bodhivasta Stupa project that is being built by Lama Rangbar. On this note, I want to thank you once again, Lamala. It was a pleasure to host you, and I wish you all the best with all your pursuits and dreams.
Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.